Week 2 of the NFL is in the books, and with it, more opportunity to add value to your deep dynasty rosters. This is Jeff Pell here with Football Guys, and I have 7 more players that you can add in your deep leagues. We use Sleeper roster percentage and look for players that are under 50% ownership, rostership on Sleeper. So these are opportunities for players that largely have accrued value through injuries, unfortunately, but players that on situations to monitor. First one up is Craig Reynolds, Lions running back. He has 0% rostership on Sleeper, and the Lions have used him in the past. Dan Campbell loves him a lot. He used him with the injury to David Montgomery to close out this week's game against the Seahawks, an unfortunate loss for the Lions. In 2021, Reynolds had 2 games towards the end of the season where he totaled over 99 scrimmage yards in both games. Now, ideally, if Montgomery misses time, this is a situation that Jahmyr Gibbs would see an opportunity to shine. He had 9 targets this past week, and so that usage is ticking upwards. But Reynolds is going to be involved if Montgomery's out. The Lions have shown their commitment to using 2 backs, and the big question will be whether or not he would have any standalone value, or we would see a shift away from the run game into more passing targets, more short yardage targets, extension of the run game type plays. But Reynolds is a player that you must add on your rosters, especially deeper leagues, because again, one injury away, potentially one more to Jahmyr Gibbs would thrust him into a major lead role. But monitor that situation with David Montgomery. And I don't know that I would play Reynolds this week, but it's one to have in your back pocket. Next up is Nelson Agholor, wide receiver from the Baltimore Ravens. We saw Odell Beckham leave that game with against Cincinnati with an injury, and it's Odell Beckham, and unfortunately, he has a long and checkered injury history. Now, Nelson Agholor is at 14% rostership on Sleeper, and he provides a deep target for that Lamar Jackson offense. We've seen Baltimore through 2 weeks utilize heavy 3 wide receiver sets, and Aguilar is going to be on the field. This past week against Cincinnati, he had 6 targets, 5 receptions, 63 yards, and he caught the touchdown that ended up being the deciding play in the game. So we've seen great production from him in the past. In the 2020 season, nearly 900 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns for the Raiders. We saw him sign a big contract with the Patriots following that offseason. Kind of disappointing production there. He was added to Baltimore before they added Odell Beckham and before they drafted Zay Flowers. So he's going to be a key player for the Ravens and a player that you could add in your deep rosters, but you're going to want to monitor and see if Rashad Bateman starts to get a little bit more involvement because he's been non-existent through the first 2 weeks. And this really looks like a Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews passing game. But Aguilar is a splash play that can fill out, especially in your deeper leagues. He's a must add. The next injury was to Saquon Barkley, and we're waiting word on that. It sounds like it's going to be an ankle, and it sounds like it's going to be short term. But the Giants have a short week this week, playing the 49ers on Thursday Night Football, and it would probably be a surprise to see Barkley ready for that game. As such, you're going to need to monitor that backfield. And Matt Breida is the one that probably stands out the most at 31% rostership. But expect that you're probably going to see a committee there. Gary Brightwell is 5% rostership, and Eric Gray, the rookie, and he's at 62%. Gray is the exciting one if things break in that direction. He's a potential 3-down back as a rookie, but Matt Breida is certainly going to see involvement, and Gary Brightwell may as well. And so that, especially in a short week against what should be a difficult opponent, likely leaves you scrambling for any startability, any streamability in this situation. But it is one to monitor as we wait and see more information on the injury to Saquon Barkley. Another injury situation, we've seen Anthony Richardson look fantastic, but through 2 weeks, he's left both games with injuries, and that's created opportunity for Gardner Minshew, who looked very good this week. He's at 36% sleeper rostership. This is a super flex consideration, deeper leagues. You should add Minshew. He went 19 for 23 for 171 yards and 1 touchdown, no turnovers against the Texans. And this is a player that he's comfortable with Shane Steichen. He knows that offense, and Steichen is comfortable with him. So they spent 2 years together in Philadelphia, now stepping into Indianapolis. Reality of it is the way that Richardson is playing the game, he's probably going to miss some time. So if you're relying on him, or if you just want to block whatever player is relying on him, Minshew is a great deep league ad, especially super flex formats. And we don't know. You never know. I mean, there could be a trade that arises as this season goes on, as the team decides to move towards more of a rebuild. But he's a player that can keep the offense on track. And that's what you want to see in a backup quarterback there, with some level of standalone usability as well. So Tyler Scott from the Bears is our next player. Darnell Mooney left this game with an injury. He was questionable coming in, kind of a short week. And so that it'll be interesting to see how that situation plays out. How Scott is a player to monitor at 48% sleeper rostership. He had 12 snaps, 10 routes, no targets, but we might be headed towards a rebuild quickly in Chicago, or we're already in a rebuild, but they might be moving off some pieces. Darnell Mooney has a pending free agency coming up, and we saw questions about Chase Claypool's effort this week. He looked better this past week, with 6 targets and catching a touchdown. But Scott is a rookie to monitor that can see more playing time as the season goes on. The injury situation has been created to potentially get him more into the lineup. So add him in your deeper leagues, and he probably moves off a stash territory. You're not going to be able to put him in your lineups anytime soon, but he's a player worth holding. The next one is very, very speculative, but Jake Browning, the Bengals backup quarterback. We've seen 2 very rough weeks out of Joe Burrow to start this season, and Browning sits as that backup there. If anything happens with the injury to Joe Burrow's calf that came in, should they decide to sit him down for a period of time, we know the talent in that Bengals roster. We've got Chase Claypool, we've got Jamar Chase, we've got T. Higgins, we've got Joe Mixon. So that creates a situation where a backup quarterback may be able to come in and give you some usability in a super flex situation. This is a very, very deep speculative play only, just if you've got extra roster space, a player to add in super flex. But it is a situation that we want to keep our eyes on. And I think maybe, unless we see some better play soon out of Burrow, the Bengals might be forced into a decision that maybe he needs a week and maybe he needs some time to reset with that offense. Our final move is Cole Turner, tight end from Washington. Logan Thomas left this past game with an injury, and it was actually John Bates that came in and led the team in snaps and targets. But Turner is a player that was involved week 1 and week 2. He was a camp standout. Bates profiles more as a blocking tight end, while Turner is more of that move tight end that we've seen become portions of the passing game. If you combine Turner and Logan Thomas from this past week, they had 5 targets between the two of them. But flashing back to week 1, Logan Thomas had 8 targets, 4 catches, 43 yards in that offense. Turner was a camp standout, and so he's a player that the staff believes in to give it a opportunity as an injury creates here, and he's a player that could claim a role and moving forward be a key piece in that. So just another deep speculative ad, but we've run through 7 different situations to keep an eye on and 7 different moves that you can make onto your dynasty roster. But please feel free to like, subscribe, and check out the rest of the great content that's coming to you from the Football Guys YouTube channel.